The clock on the wall showed 7:30 p.m. Riverside High School was empty now. All the students had gone home hours ago. The teachers had finished their work and left too. The long hallways were quiet and dark. Only the sound of wheels rolling on the floor could be heard. It was Marcus Williams pushing his cleaning cart down the hallway. Marcus was 45 years old. He had been working as the night janitor at Riverside High School for 3 years. Every evening he came to work when everyone else was leaving. He cleaned the classrooms, emptied the trash cans, and mopped the floors. He worked alone most of the time. He liked it that way. Marcus was a tall man with kind eyes and strong hands. His uniform was always clean and neat. He took pride in his work, even though others did not seem to notice him. Most of the time, people walked past him like he was not there. They did not say hello. They did not ask how his day was going. To them, he was just the janitor, but Marcus did not mind being invisible. He had bigger things on his mind. As he cleaned each classroom, he would look at the boards where teachers had written their lessons. He would read the books left on desks. He would study the problems written on the walls. Nobody knew that Marcus loved to learn. Tonight was like any other night. Marcus started in the science wing of the school. He cleaned the chemistry lab first. The teacher had left some experiments on the tables. Marcus carefully cleaned around them, making sure not to disturb anything important. He wiped down the lab tables and swept the floor. Next, he moved to the biology classroom. There were pictures of animals and plants on the walls. Marcus had always been interested in science. When he was younger, he had dreamed of becoming a scientist, but life had taken him on a different path. Still, he enjoyed learning about new things whenever he could. After finishing the science wing, Marcus pushed his cart toward the math hallway. This was his favorite part of the school to clean. The math classrooms always had interesting problems written on the boards. Marcus would read them while he worked. Sometimes he would even solve them in his head. As he entered the first math classroom, Marcus saw equations written all over the whiteboard. The teacher had been working on algebra problems with the students. Marcus read through each problem as he cleaned the desks. He could solve all of them easily, but he never told anyone that Marcus had a secret that nobody at the school knew. He was not just a janitor who happened to like math. He was actually very good at math, better than most people could imagine. But he kept this secret to himself. He had learned that people often judged others by their jobs, not by what they knew. When Marcus was young, he had been the smartest kid in his class. He loved numbers and solving problems. His teachers always said he was gifted. They told him he could become anything he wanted. Marcus believed them. He worked hard in school and got good grades. After high school, Marcus won a scholarship to college. He was so excited. His family was proud of him. He was the first person in his family to go to college. Marcus studied hard and graduated with the best grades in his class, but he did not stop there. He wanted to learn more. Marcus went to graduate school and then to even more school after that. He studied mathematics and engineering. He spent years learning about complicated equations and solving difficult problems. He wrote papers that other smart people read and respected. Marcus became an expert in his field, but when Marcus finished his education, he faced a problem he had not expected. Finding a good job was harder than he thought it would be. Many companies would not hire him even though he was qualified. Some people made excuses, others just ignored his applications. Marcus began to understand that his skin color was making things difficult for him. For months, Marcus applied for jobs at universities and companies. He sent out hundreds of applications. He went to many interviews. But every time, he was told they had chosen someone else. The rejections were painful. Marcus had worked so hard, but it seemed like it did not matter. Eventually, Marcus ran out of money. He had a wife and 2 young children to support. He could not wait any longer for the perfect job. He needed to work and earn money for his family. That is when he saw the job posting for a janitor at Riverside High School. At first, Marcus did not want to take the job. It was not what he had studied for. It was not what he had dreamed of doing. But his family needed food and a place to live. Marcus swallowed his pride and applied for the janitor position. He got the job right away. For 3 years now, Marcus had been cleaning the school where he could have been teaching. Every night he walked through classrooms where teachers were, doing the work he was trained to do. Sometimes he would see mistakes on the boards that the teachers had made, but he never said anything. Who would believe that the janitor knew more about math than the math teachers? Marcus found small ways to satisfy his love of learning. He would borrow books from the school library and read them at home. He would work on difficult math problems in his spare time. He even tried to help his own children with their homework. Though he had to be careful not to make it too obvious how much he knew, the hardest part was applying for teaching jobs at the school. Twice, Marcus had filled out applications to work. As a math teacher at Riverside High, he was more qualified than any of the current teachers. But somehow, his applications always got lost or filed in the wrong place. The school never called him for an interview. Marcus suspected that some people at the school did not want to see their janitor become their colleague. It was easier for them to think of him as just the cleaning man. They could not imagine that. He might be smarter than they were, but Marcus did not give up hope. He kept applying for teaching jobs at other schools. He kept studying and learning. He knew that someday his chance would come. He just had to be patient and keep working hard. As Marcus finished cleaning the first math classroom, he moved on to the next one. This classroom belonged to Mr. Davidson, the head of the math department. Mr. Davidson was known for being smart, but also for being mean to people he thought were beneath him. He never spoke to Marcus except to complain about the cleaning. Marcus entered Mr. Davidson's classroom and saw that the whiteboard was covered with very difficult math problems. These were calculus equations, much harder than the algebra he had seen in the other classroom. Marcus looked at the problems with interest. He could see that they were about rates of change in areas under curves. As Marcus cleaned the desks, he studied the problems on the board. He noticed that one of them had a small mistake in it. The teacher had made an error in the third step of the solution. Marcus smiled to himself. Even the head of the math department made mistakes sometimes. Marcus finished cleaning the classroom and moved on to the next one. He did not know that tomorrow night his secret would finally come out. He did not know that Mr. Davidson would soon learn that the quiet janitor knew more about mathematics than he could have ever imagined. For now, Marcus was content to clean and learn in silence. The change was coming to Riverside High School, whether they were ready for it or not. The next evening came quickly. Marcus arrived at Riverside High School at his usual time. He parked his old car in the back parking lot where the other workers parked. He grabbed his cleaning supplies from the trunk and walked toward the back entrance of the school. The building was quiet, just like every other night. Marcus had no idea that this night would be different from all the others. He did not know that Mr. Davidson had stayed late and was waiting for him. He did not know that the mean math teacher had planned something cruel just for fun. Mr. Davidson was sitting in his classroom when Marcus arrived. This was unusual. Most teachers left the school by 4 p.m. It was now 7:30 p.m. Marcus was surprised to see someone still there. He knocked on the classroom door before entering. "Good evening, Mr. Davidson," Marcus said politely. "I can come back later if you are still working." Mr. Davidson looked up from his desk with a strange smile on his face. No, Marcus. Come. And I was actually waiting for you." Marcus felt confused. Why would a teacher wait for the janitor? Mr. Davidson had never shown any interest in talking to him before. In fact, Mr. Davidson usually acted like Marcus was not even there. Sometimes he would even make rude comments about the cleaning when Marcus was in the room. "You were waiting for me, sir?" Marcus asked as he pushed his cleaning cart into the classroom. "Yes, I was," Mr. Davidson said, standing up from his chair. "I have been thinking about something all day. You clean this classroom every night. You must see all these math problems on my board. Have you ever wondered what they mean?" Marcus was not sure how to answer. He did not want to seem too interested in the math problems. People might think it was strange for a janitor to care about such things. "I see them, sir, but I just clean around them," he said carefully. Mr. Davidson walked over to the whiteboard where he had written some very difficult calculus problems. These were even harder than the ones from the night before. These are calculus problems, Marcus. Very advanced mathematics. Only very smart people can solve them. It takes years of study to understand this level of math. Marcus nodded and began to clean the desks, hoping the conversation would end soon. But Mr. Davidson was just getting started with his cruel plan. "You know what, Marcus?" Mr. Davidson said with a mean laugh. "I bet you have never seen math this difficult before. I bet you could not even read these problems, let alone solve them." Other teachers had started to gather in the hallway. Word had spread that Mr. Davidson was having fun with the janitor. Mrs. Peterson from the English department peeked into the room. Mr. Johnson from Social Studies walked in and leaned against the wall. Even Miss Rodriguez from the art department came to see what was happening. Marcus felt uncomfortable with all the attention. He preferred to work quietly by himself. "I should probably finish my cleaning," he said, trying to end the conversation, but Mr. Davidson was enjoying himself too much to stop. "Wait, Marcus, I have an idea, a fun challenge for you." He pointed to the most difficult problem on the board. "This is a differential equation, very advanced calculus. I bet you $50 that you cannot solve this problem." The other teachers started to giggle and whisper to each other. They thought Mr. Davidson was being funny. To them, it was obvious that a janitor could not solve a calculus problem. They saw it as harmless entertainment. $50? Marcus asked, looking at the problem on the board. "That's right," Mr. Davidson said loudly so all the other teachers could hear. $50 if you can solve this problem correctly. But when you fail, and you will fail, you have to wash my car for free every week for a month." The teachers laughed harder now. They thought this was very amusing. Mrs. Peterson whispered to Mr. Johnson, "This is so mean, but also kind of funny." Mr. Johnson nodded and smiled. Marcus looked at the problem on the board. It was a complex differential equation involving integration by parts. He could see right away that it was a challenging problem, but not impossible to solve. In fact, he could see that Mr. Davidson had made the same mistake as the night before. There was an error in the setup that would lead to the wrong answer. "You really want to bet $50? Marcus asked again. "Absolutely," Mr. Davidson said confidently. "Easy money for me. There is no way you can solve this problem. I have a master's degree in mathematics. I have been teaching for 15 years. This problem is hard even for me." Marcus set down his cleaning cloth and walked closer to the whiteboard. The other teachers moved in closer too. They wanted to watch the janitor fail at something they thought was impossible for him. "And if I solve it correctly, I get the $50? Marcus asked one more time. Yes, Mr. Davidson said impatiently, "but you won't solve it. Trust me on that." Ms. Rodriguez whispered to Mrs. Peterson, "I almost feel bad for him. He has no idea how hard this is going to be." Mrs. Peterson replied, "Maybe this will teach him to know his place." Marcus heard their whispers, but he did not react. He had heard comments like this before. People often thought that because he was a janitor, he must not be very smart. They judged him by his job, not by his mind. "Okay," Marcus said simply. "I will try to solve your problem." The teachers exchanged looks of disbelief. Did the janitor really think he could solve a calculus problem? They settled in to watch what they expected to be a very short and embarrassing failure. Mr. Davidson handed Marcus a piece of chalk. "Go ahead," he said with a smirk. "Show us what you can do." Marcus took the chalk and stood in front of the whiteboard. He looked at the problem carefully for a few seconds. The room was completely quiet. All the teachers were staring at him, waiting for him to give up or write something completely wrong, but Marcus did not give up. Instead, he began to write on the board with steady, confident movements. His handwriting was neat and clear. He started by rewriting the problem, correcting Mr. Davidson's mistake from the beginning. The teachers watched in growing surprise as Marcus worked. His steps were logical and precise. He was not guessing or making random marks on the board. He clearly understood what he was doing. "Wait a minute," Mrs. Peterson whispered. "He actually seems to know what he's doing." Mr. Johnson frowned. "That's impossible. He's just a janitor." But Marcus continued working on the problem. He used integration by parts correctly. He applied substitution methods where needed. He worked through each step methodically, showing all his work clearly on the board. Mr. Davidson's confident smile began to fade. This was not going the way he had planned. The janitor was not supposed to know anything about calculus. He was supposed to fail quickly and embarrassingly. Instead, Marcus was solving the problem like he had done it many times before. After about 10 minutes, Marcus stepped back from the board. He had not only solved the original problem, but he had also shown the correct way to set it up from the beginning. His solution was complete and accurate. The room was dead silent. All the teachers stared at the whiteboard in shock. The math problem that Mr. Davidson had thought was too difficult for a janitor had been solved perfectly. Marcus set down the chalk and turned to face the group of stunned teachers. "I believe you owe me $50, he said quietly. Mr. Davidson's face had turned red. He looked back and forth between Marcus and the board, unable to believe what he was seeing. The other teachers stood with their mouths open, trying to understand how this was possible, but Marcus was not finished yet. He had something more to show them, something that would change everything they thought they knew about him. The real surprise was still to come. The silence in the classroom was so thick you could cut it with a knife. 5 teachers stood frozen, staring at the whiteboard where Marcus had just solved the calculus problem perfectly. Their eyes moved from the neat writing on the board to Marcus, then back to the board again. Nobody could speak. Mr. Davidson's face had gone from red to pale white. He kept opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water, but no words came out. This was not supposed to happen. The janitor was supposed to fail. He was supposed to look foolish and give up quickly. Instead, Marcus had solved the problem better than most college students could. Mrs. Peterson was the first to find her voice. "How did you?" she started, then stopped. She did not know how to finish the question. Marcus looked at the shocked faces around him. He had been keeping his secret for 3 years. He had watched these same teachers walk past him every day, treating him like he was invisible or stupid. Now they were seeing him in a completely different way, and they did not know what to think. "Is the solution correct?" Marcus asked Mr. Davidson calmly. Mr. Davidson forced himself to look at the board again. He studied each step of Marcus's work. He checked the math carefully, hoping to find a mistake, but there were no mistakes. The solution was not just correct, it was perfect. Every step was clear and logical. The handwriting was neat and easy to read. Marcus had even organized his work better than Mr. Davidson usually did. It's correct," Mr. Davidson admitted quietly. "Then I believe you owe me $50, Marcus said again. Mr. Davidson reached into his wallet with shaking hands. He pulled out $50 and handed it to Marcus. He still could not believe what had just happened, but Marcus was not done yet. He looked at the other math problems that Mr. Davidson had written on the board earlier that day. These were problems that Mr. Davidson had worked on with his advanced calculus class. They were supposed to be very difficult. "I notice you have some other problems up here," Marcus said, pointing to the board. "Would you like me to check them for you?" "Check them?" Mr. Davidson asked weakly. "For mistakes," Marcus said simply. The other teachers moved closer to the board. They wanted to see what Marcus was talking about. Mr. Davidson had always been proud of his math skills. He was the head of the department. He had been teaching for 15 years. Surely he had not made any mistakes. Marcus picked up the chalk again. He pointed to the second problem on the board. "In this one, you made an error in step 4. You forgot to apply the chain rule when you took the derivative." He erased part of Mr. Davidson's work and rewrote it correctly. "It should look like this," he said, showing the proper solution. Mr. Davidson studied the correction. Marcus was right. It was a mistake that Mr. Davidson had not noticed. A mistake that none of his students had caught either. Marcus moved to the third problem. "This one has a similar issue. In step 6, you switch the order of operations incorrectly. It changes the final answer." Again, Marcus erased the wrong part and wrote the correct solution. His work was clear and easy to follow. Ms. Rodriguez whispered to Mrs. Peterson, "He's not just solving the problems, he's teaching them better than Davidson does." The fourth problem had a different kind of mistake. Here, you used the wrong formula for integration by parts, Marcus explained as he corrected it. This formula only works when the function meets certain conditions. In this case, you need to use a different approach. Marcus showed the correct method, working through each step carefully. His explanation was so clear that even Mrs. Peterson, who taught English and knew very little math, could follow along. By now, more teachers had gathered in the hallway outside the classroom. Word was spreading through the school that something amazing was happening in Mr. Davidson's room. Teachers who had stayed late for meetings or to grade papers were coming to see what all the excitement was about. Principal Johnson heard the commotion and came to investigate. He pushed through the crowd of teachers and entered the classroom. "What's going on here?" he asked. The teachers all started talking at once, trying to explain what they had witnessed. The janitor solved a calculus problem. He corrected Davidson's work. "You have to see this to believe it." Principal Johnson looked confused. He saw Marcus standing at the whiteboard with chalk in his hand. He saw complex math equations covering the board. He saw Mr. Davidson sitting in a chair, looking like he had seen a ghost. "Someone explain this to me slowly," Principal Johnson said. Mr. Davidson finally found his voice. "I bet Marcus $50 that he couldn't solve a calculus problem. I thought it would be funny, but he solved it perfectly. And then he found mistakes in my other work. Mistakes I didn't even know I had made." Principal Johnson looked at Marcus with new interest. "You solved calculus problems?" "Yes, sir," Marcus replied politely. "How do you know calculus?" the principal asked. Marcus hesitated. He had been hiding his education for so long that it felt strange to talk about it. But there was no point in keeping it secret anymore. Everyone had seen what he could do. "I studied mathematics in college," Marcus said simply. "You went to college?" Mrs. Peterson asked in surprise. "Yes, ma'am. What college?" Principal Johnson wanted to know. Marcus took a deep breath. "I have a bachelor's degree from Howard University. I also have a master's degree from Johns Hopkins. And I have a PhD in mathematics from MIT. The room exploded in shocked voices. Teachers started talking all at once. "MIT? A PhD? The janitor has a PhD from MIT. Principal Johnson held up his hand for quiet. "You have a doctorate in mathematics?" "Yes, sir." "I also have a master's degree in engineering from Stanford University." The silence returned, but now it was a different kind of silence. It was not the silence of shock at seeing a janitor solve math problems. It was the silence of people realizing they had been completely wrong about someone for 3 years. Mr. Davidson looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. He had been making fun of someone who was far more educated than he was. Someone who probably knew more about mathematics than the entire math department combined. Mrs. Peterson felt embarrassed about all the times she had walked past Marcus without saying hello. All the times she had acted like he was not important enough to notice. Miss Rodriguez remembered the comments she had made about Marcus knowing his place. She realized now how cruel and ignorant those comments had been. Principal Johnson was trying to process what he had learned. "Dr. Williams," he said, using Marcus's proper title for the first time. "If you have all these qualifications, why are you working as a janitor?" Marcus set down the chalk and turned to face the group. "Because this was the only job I could get," he said honestly. The simple truth of his words hit everyone in the room. They all understood what he meant, even if he did not say it directly. Marcus had been unable to get a teaching job, not because he was not qualified, but because of other reasons that had nothing to do with his abilities. "I applied to work here as a math teacher twice," Marcus continued. "Both times my application got lost or filed incorrectly. I was told there were no openings, even when I knew there were." Principal Johnson's face turned red. He remembered those applications now. He had seen Marcus's name on them, but he had not taken them seriously. He had assumed that a janitor applying for a teaching job was just dreaming. He had never bothered to look at Marcus's qualifications. The room was quiet again as everyone absorbed what they had learned. The man they had been ignoring for 3 years was not just smart, he was brilliant. He was more qualified to teach mathematics than anyone else in the school. and they had wasted his talents by having him push a mop instead of teaching students. Marcus picked up his cleaning cloth and started to wipe down the desks again. "I should finish my work," he said quietly, but Principal Johnson stopped him. "Wait, Dr. Williams, we need to talk." Principal Johnson stared at Marcus with a mixture of amazement and embarrassment. The man he had seen pushing a mop cart through the hallways every night for 3 years was actually Dr. Marcus Williams, a brilliant mathematician with degrees from some of the best universities in the country. "Dr. Williams," Principal Johnson said again, still getting used to using the proper title, "please, sit down. We really need to talk about this." Marcus looked around the room at all the faces, staring at him. Some looked curious, others looked ashamed. Mr. Davidson still looked like he was in shock. Marcus had spent 3 years being invisible to these people, and now suddenly he was the center of attention. "I would prefer to finish my cleaning first," Marcus said politely. "I have a job to do." "No," Principal Johnson said firmly. "Your cleaning can wait. This conversation cannot." The other teachers began to file out of the room, sensing that this was going to be a private discussion between Marcus and the principal. But Principal Johnson stopped them. "Actually, I think you all should stay," he said. "You all witnessed what happened here tonight, and I think we all need to hear the full story." Mrs. Peterson shifted uncomfortably. She was starting to realize how badly she and the other teachers had treated Marcus. Miss Rodriguez looked down at the floor, unable to meet Marcus's eyes. Mr. Johnson from Social Studies was thinking about all the times he had complained about the cleaning without ever thanking the person who did it. Principal Johnson pulled up a chair and sat down across from Marcus. "Dr. Williams, please help me understand something. You say you applied for teaching positions here twice. I need to know exactly what happened with those applications." Marcus sat down slowly. He had not talked about this with anyone at the school before. For 3 years he had kept his frustration and disappointment to himself. "The first time was about 2.5 years ago," Marcus began. "There was an opening for a math teacher when Mr. Peterson retired. I filled out all the paperwork and submitted my resume with copies of my degrees. I waited for someone to call me for an interview, but no one ever did." Principal Johnson frowned. He remembered when Mr. Peterson retired. They had hired Mrs. Chun to replace him. Mrs. Chun was a good teacher, but she only had a bachelor's degree and 2 years of experience. "What happened when you followed up?" Principal Johnson asked. "I called the school office several times," Marcus continued. "Each time I was told that my application was being reviewed. Then after a month I was told that the position had been filled and that my application would be kept on file for future openings." The principal felt a sick feeling in his stomach. He was beginning to remember the details of that hiring process. He had received Marcus's application, but he had not given it serious consideration. When he saw that the applicant was currently working as a janitor, he had assumed the person was not qualified for a teaching position. "And the second time?" Principal Johnson asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. "Last year, when Mrs. Rodriguez left the math department to teach art full-time," Marcus said. "I applied again. This time, I hand-delivered my application to make sure it would not get lost. I also included letters of recommendation from my professors at MIT and copies of academic papers I had published." Miss Rodriguez winced. She remembered switching from math to art because she had found the advanced math classes too difficult to teach. The school had ended up hiring Mr. Thompson, a young teacher fresh out of college who struggled with the more challenging courses. "What happened with that application?" Principal Johnson asked, though he already suspected the answer. "I was told that there had been a filing error and that my application had been misplaced," Marcus said calmly. "When I offered to submit another copy, I was told that the position had already been filled and that they were no longer accepting applications." The room was completely silent. Everyone could see the pattern now. Marcus had been qualified for both positions, more qualified than the people who were actually hired. But his applications had been ignored or dismissed. Principal Johnson rubbed his forehead. "Dr. Williams, I owe you a sincere apology. Those applications should have been taken seriously. You should have been interviewed for both positions. Why? Weren't they taken seriously? Mr. Davidson asked quietly. He was starting to understand the uncomfortable truth about what had happened. Principal Johnson looked embarrassed. I'm ashamed to admit this, but when I saw that the applicant was working as a janitor, I assumed he was not qualified to teach. I never actually looked at his credentials. Mrs. Peterson spoke up. But even if you had looked at his resume, would you have believed it? Would any of us have believed that our janitor had a PhD from MIT? It was a fair question, and it made everyone in the room think about their own assumptions and prejudices. Marcus had been quiet during this exchange. But now he spoke up. The truth is, I've faced this problem at other schools too. Many principals and hiring committees find it hard to believe that someone with my background would be working as a janitor. They assume there must be something wrong with my qualifications or my character. But there's nothing wrong with your qualifications, Principal Johnson said. Your degrees are from excellent schools. The work you did on that whiteboard tonight proved that you know your subject better than most teachers. Then why do you think I've had trouble finding a teaching job? Marcus asked quietly. The question hung in the air. Everyone in the room knew the answer, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. Marcus was a highly qualified African-American man who had been passed over for jobs that went to less qualified white candidates. It was an uncomfortable truth that no one wanted to acknowledge. Directly, Mr. Davidson finally broke the silence. I think we all know why, he said quietly. And it makes me sick to think about it, Marcus nodded. I don't like to assume that racism is always the reason when things don't go my way. But when you apply for dozens of jobs that you're clearly qualified for and you keep getting rejected, you start to see a pattern. How many schools have you applied to? Ms. Rodriguez asked. Over the past 5 years, I've applied to more than 200 teaching positions, Marcus said. I've had maybe 20 interviews. Most of the time, I never hear back at all. The number was staggering. 200 applications with almost no success. Everyone in the room could imagine how discouraging that must have been. But you kept trying, Mrs. Peterson observed. I have a family to support, Marcus explained. My wife works part-time as a nurse, but it's not enough to pay all our bills. Our children are 10 and 12 years old. They need food, clothes, and a place to live. When I couldn't find a teaching job, I had to find work somewhere else. Principal Johnson felt worse and worse as he heard Marcus's story. So you took the janitor job here to support your family while you continued looking for teaching work. That's right, Marcus confirmed. I kept applying for teaching jobs at other schools, hoping that eventually someone would give me a chance. But I also kept applying here because this seemed like a good school with good students. And we kept rejecting you, Principal Johnson said with shame in his voice. The applications kept getting lost or filed incorrectly, Marcus said diplomatically. Everyone in the room understood that this was Marcus's polite way of saying that his applications had been deliberately ignored. Mr. Davidson stood up and walked to the whiteboard where Marcus's perfect solutions were still written. Dr. Williams, I want you to know that I'm deeply sorry for what I did tonight. I was trying to humiliate you, and that was wrong. You were also wrong about my abilities, Marcus said with a slight smile. Completely wrong, Mr. Davidson agreed. You know more about mathematics than I do. You probably know more than our entire department combined. Principal Johnson was already thinking about what needed to happen next. The school had wasted 3 years of having a brilliant mathematician working as a janitor. They had overlooked someone who could have been one of their best teachers. The situation needed to be corrected immediately. Dr. Williams, Principal Johnson said, I want to offer you a position as a mathematics teacher, effective immediately, but Marcus held up his hand. I appreciate the offer, but I think we need to talk about this more carefully. A lot has happened tonight, and everyone needs time to process it. He was right, of course. The revelation that the janitor was actually a highly qualified teacher had shocked everyone. Changes this big needed to be handled thoughtfully, but Principal Johnson was determined to make things right. You're absolutely right, we need to do this properly. But I want you to know that I'm serious about offering you a teaching position. You belong in a classroom, not pushing a mop. Marcus smiled for the first time that evening. Thank you, he said simply. That means more to me than you know. The next morning, Riverside High School was buzzing with excitement. News traveled fast in a small school, and the story of what had happened the night before was spreading like wildfire. Students gathered in small groups in the hallways, whispering about the janitor who had shocked all the teachers. It started when Ms. Rodriguez arrived at school early and told the story to Mrs. Kim, the secretary. Mrs. Kim was so amazed that she had to tell someone else. Soon, she was sharing the story with every teacher who walked through the main office. You're kidding me, said Mr. Brown, the gym teacher. The janitor really has a Ph.D. from MIT. I saw it with my own eyes, Ms. Rodriguez said for the 10th time that morning. He solved calculus problems like they were simple addition, and he corrected mistakes that Davidson didn't even know he had made. By the time the first period bell rang, almost every teacher in the school had heard some version of the story. Some of the details had gotten mixed up as the story was retold, but the main facts remained the same. Marcus Williams, the quiet night janitor, was actually a brilliant mathematician. The students started hearing the story during first period. Sarah Chun, whose mother worked in the school office, came to school with inside information. My mom said the janitor is actually smarter than all our teachers, Sarah told her friends at lunch. She said he has more college degrees than the principal. No way, said Tyler Martinez. Janitors don't have college degrees? This one does. Sarah insisted. My mom said he went to MIT. That's like the smartest school in the country. By lunchtime, the story had spread to every student in the school. Some didn't believe it at first. How could the quiet man who cleaned their classrooms be a famous scientist? But as more details came out, even the skeptical students had to admit that something amazing had happened. Emma Johnson was one of the students who was most interested in the story. She was struggling in her advanced calculus class with Mr. Davidson. The math was so hard that she was thinking about dropping the class. But now she was wondering if the janitor could help her understand the problems that Mr. Davidson couldn't explain clearly. Do you think he would help me with my homework? Emma asked her friend Jessica. I don't know, Jessica replied. Maybe we should ask him tonight when he comes to clean our classroom. Meanwhile, the teachers were having their own discussions about what had happened. Some felt embarrassed about how they had treated Marcus over the past 3 years. Others were curious about his background and wanted to know more about his education. Mrs. Peterson was having the hardest time with the news. She kept thinking about all the times she had walked past Marcus without saying hello. She remembered occasions when she had complained about the cleaning without thinking about the person doing the work. I feel terrible, she told her friend. Mrs. Davis, during their planning period, I've been so rude to him, and the whole time he was more educated than any of us. We all feel bad about it, Mrs. Davis replied. But we can't change what happened. We can only try to do better from now on. In the math department, the conversation was more complicated. Mr. Davidson was still in shock from the night before. He had barely slept, thinking about how he had tried to humiliate someone who was far more qualified than he was. I don't understand how this happened, he said to Mr. Thompson, the other math teacher. How did we not know that we had a genius working as our janitor? Mr. Thompson shrugged. Maybe we didn't want to know. Maybe it was easier to think of him as just the cleaning guy. The conversation was interrupted when Principal Johnson called an emergency meeting for all the teachers. Everyone gathered in the library during their lunch break, curious about what the principal had to say. I'm sure you've all heard about what happened last night, Principal Johnson began. I want to address this situation directly and honestly. The teachers sat quietly, waiting to hear what he would say. First, I want to acknowledge that we made serious mistakes in how we handled Dr. Williams's job applications. We failed to give proper consideration to a highly qualified candidate, and that is unacceptable. Some teachers nodded in agreement, others looked uncomfortable. Second, I want everyone to understand that Dr. Williams has agreed to meet with me this afternoon to discuss a possible teaching position. If he accepts, he will be joining our faculty as soon as possible. A murmur went through the room. Several teachers looked excited about the possibility of having such a qualified colleague. Finally, I want to address the elephant in the room, Principal Johnson continued. We need to take a hard look at ourselves and ask why we didn't see Dr. Williams's potential. We need to examine our assumptions and biases to make sure something like this never happens again. The room was quiet as the teachers absorbed his words. It was not comfortable to think about their own prejudices, but it was necessary. Mrs. Peterson raised her hand. What can we do to make things right? We can start by treating Dr. Williams with the respect he deserves, Principal Johnson replied. We can also learn from this experience and be more open-minded about the people around us. After the meeting, the teachers went back to their classrooms with a lot to think about. The students could tell that something important was happening, but they didn't know all the details yet. As the day went on, more and more people heard about Marcus's amazing demonstration the night before. Some of the details got exaggerated as the story was retold. By the end of the day, some students were saying that Marcus had solved impossible math problems that no one else in the world could figure out, but the true story was impressive enough without any exaggeration. Marcus Williams, the man they had all ignored, was actually one of the smartest people in the building when school ended that afternoon. Many students lingered in the hallways, hoping to catch a glimpse of Marcus when he arrived for his evening shift. They wanted to see this mysterious janitor mathematician for themselves. Emma Johnson was among the students who stayed late. She had brought her calculus homework with her, hoping to ask Marcus for help. She wasn't sure if he would be willing to help a student, but she figured it was worth asking. At 7:30 p.m., Marcus arrived at school just like he had every night for 3 years, but this time was different. As he walked down the hallway with his cleaning cart, students and teachers stopped to stare at him. Some waved or said hello. Others just watched him with curious expressions. Marcus felt strange with all the attention. For 3 years he had been invisible. Now, suddenly, everyone wanted to look at him. He wasn't sure how he felt about the change. As he began cleaning the first classroom, Emma Johnson appeared in the doorway. "Excuse me, Dr. Williams?" she said nervously. Marcus looked up in surprise. No student had ever called him doctor before. In fact, most students barely noticed him at all. "Yes?" he said kindly. "I'm Emma. I'm in Mr. Davidson's calculus class. I was wondering if you might be willing to help me with some homework problems. I'm having a really hard time understanding integration by parts." Marcus smiled. This was what he had always wanted to do, help students learn and understand mathematics. "I would be happy to help you," he said. "Show me what you're working on." As Emma pulled out her homework, other students began to gather in the hallway. Outside the classroom, word was spreading that Dr. Williams was helping with math homework. Soon, there was a small crowd of students waiting for their turn to get help. Marcus looked at all the eager faces and realized that his life was about to change in ways he had never imagined. The secret was out, and there was no going back. For the first time in 3 years, he felt truly hopeful about his future. 3 days after the incident in Mr. Davidson's classroom, Dr. Susan Martinez arrived at Riverside High School. She was a representative from the school board, and she had come to investigate what had happened. The school board had received several phone calls from concerned parents and community members who had heard about the situation. Dr. Martinez was a serious woman in her 50s who had worked in education for over 20 years. She had seen many problems in schools before, but this case was unusual. It was not often that a school discovered they had been employing a brilliant mathematician as a janitor for 3 years. Principal Johnson met Dr. Martinez in his office first thing in the morning. He looked nervous as he explained what had happened. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Dr. Martinez said, reviewing her notes. "You had a janitor who applied for teaching positions twice, and both times his applications were either lost or ignored." "That's correct," Principal Johnson admitted. "I take full responsibility for not handling those applications properly." "And this janitor has a PhD in mathematics from MIT and a master's degree in engineering from Stanford?" Yes, Dr. Williams is extremely well qualified. Dr. Martinez shook her head. How did no one know about his education for 3 years? Principal Johnson shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I think we all made assumptions based on his job title. We didn't look beyond the fact that he was working as a janitor. Did anyone ever talk to him? Get to know him as a person? Not really, Principal Johnson had to admit. Most of the staff treated him as if he was invisible. Dr. Martinez made notes as they talked. This was clearly a case of discrimination, even if it had not been intentional. The school had failed to recognize talent that was right in front of them. I need to interview Dr. Williams myself, Dr. Martinez said. And I want to talk to some of the teachers who witnessed what happened that night. Later that morning, Dr. Martinez met with Marcus in the principal's office. Marcus had taken a few days off from his janitor job while the school figured out what to do next. He was dressed in a suit and tie, and he looked like the professional educator he was trained to be. Dr. Williams, thank you for meeting with me, Dr. Martinez said. I want to understand your experience here at Riverside High. School, Marcus told his story calmly and honestly. He explained how he had applied for teaching jobs at many schools over the years. He described the frustration of being qualified for positions but never getting hired. He talked about taking the janitor job to support his family while continuing to look for teaching work. When you applied here for teaching positions, what happened exactly? Dr. Martinez asked. The first time, I was told my application was being reviewed, but I never heard back, Marcus explained. The second time, I was told there had been a filing error and my application was lost. Did you believe that explanation? Marcus paused before answering. I wanted to believe it. But after applying to so many schools with similar results, I started to see a pattern. Dr. Martinez nodded. She had heard stories like this before. Qualified minority candidates often faced barriers that were hard to prove but impossible to ignore. Tell me about your experience working as a janitor here, she said. The work itself was fine, Marcus said. I took pride in doing a good job. But socially, it was difficult. Most people acted like I didn't exist. Some teachers would complain about the cleaning while I was in the room as if I couldn't hear them. That must have been very frustrating. It was, Marcus admitted, especially knowing that I could help those students who were struggling with math. I would see them having trouble with problems that I could explain easily, but it wasn't my place to interfere. Dr. Martinez spent the rest of the morning interviewing teachers. She talked to Mr. Davidson, who was clearly embarrassed about his role in the incident. She spoke with Mrs. Peterson, Ms. Rodriguez, and several other faculty members. The picture that emerged was troubling. The teachers had treated Marcus poorly, not because they were intentionally cruel, but because they had never seen him as a person worth knowing. They had made assumptions based on his job and his race, and those assumptions had blinded them to his abilities. We all feel terrible about how we treated him, Mrs. Peterson told Dr. Martinez. Looking back, there were signs that he was different from other janitors we've had. He was always reading books during his breaks. He would look at the math problems on the boards with real interest. But we never paid attention to those signs. Mr. Davidson was the most honest about what had happened. I was trying to humiliate him, he said bluntly. I thought it would be funny to watch the janitor fail at something I considered impossible for him. I was being a bully and I'm ashamed of myself. What made you think it was acceptable to treat him that way? Dr. Martinez asked. Mr. Davidson thought for a moment. I guess I didn't see him as a real person. He was just the janitor to me. I never considered that he might have feelings or intelligence or dignity that deserved respect. In the afternoon, Dr. Martinez interviewed some of the students. They had a different perspective on the situation. Many of them had never paid much attention to Marcus before, but they were excited about the possibility of having such a smart teacher. Is it true that he's smarter than all our teachers? Asked Emma Johnson, the student who had asked Marcus for help with her homework. He's certainly very well educated, Dr. Martinez replied diplomatically. I hope he becomes our teacher, Emma said. Mr. Davidson is okay, but he's not very good at explaining things. When Dr. Williams helped me with my homework, he made everything so clear and easy to understand. Other students had similar stories. In just a few days, Marcus had helped several students with their math homework. His explanations were clearer and more patient than what they got in their regular classes. By the end of the day, Dr. Martinez had a complete picture of what had happened at Riverside High School. It was a story of missed opportunities, unconscious bias, and wasted talent. But it was also a story of redemption and second chances. That evening, Dr. Martinez met with the school board to present her findings. The 5 board members listened carefully as she explained the situation. "This is clearly a case of discrimination," said board member Mr. Patterson. "We need to make sure this never happens again. What do you recommend we do?" asked board chairwoman Mrs. Foster. "First, we need to offer Dr. Williams a teaching position immediately, with full back pay for the salary difference between what he earned as a janitor and what he should have earned as a teacher," Dr. Martinez said. "That's going to be expensive," noted board member Miss Clark. "It's the right thing to do," Dr. Martinez replied firmly. "We also need to implement better hiring practices to prevent this from happening again. And we need to provide training for our staff about unconscious bias and treating all employees with respect." The board voted unanimously to accept Dr. Martinez's recommendations. They also voted to offer Marcus the position of head of the mathematics department, recognizing his superior qualifications. The next morning, Principal Johnson called Marcus with the good news. "Dr. Williams, the school board has voted to offer you the position of head of the mathematics department, effective immediately. They're also offering to pay you back wages to make up for the salary difference over the past 3 years." Marcus was quiet for a moment as he processed the news. After years of rejection and disappointment, it was hard to believe that his luck had finally changed. "I accept the position," he said finally, "but I have one condition." "What's that?" "Principal," Johnson asked, "I want to start a program to help students who are struggling with math. Too many kids give up on mathematics because they think they're not smart enough. I want to show them that everyone can learn if they have the right teacher and the right support." Principal Johnson smiled. "I think that's a wonderful idea, Dr. Williams. When can you start? How about Monday?" Marcus replied. As Marcus hung up the phone, he thought about how much his life was about to change. For 3 years, he had cleaned classrooms where he dreamed of teaching. Now, finally, he would get his chance to do what he had always been meant to do. The investigation had revealed uncomfortable truths about how the school had treated him. But more importantly, it had opened the door to a better future for Marcus and for all the students he would teach. Emma Johnson could not stop thinking about what had happened with Dr. Williams. She was so excited about having a brilliant new math teacher that she decided to share the story with her friends online. She posted about it on social media, telling everyone about the amazing janitor who turned out to be a genius. "You guys won't believe what happened at my school," Emma wrote on her social media account. "Our janitor just became our new math teacher because he has a PhD from MIT. A teacher tried to embarrass him with a hard math problem, but he solved it perfectly and corrected the teacher's mistakes. This is the coolest thing ever." Emma's post got a few likes and comments from her friends at first, but then her cousin in California shared it, and her cousin's friends started sharing it too. Within a few hours, the story was being shared by people all over the country. By the next morning, Emma's simple post had been shared thousands of times. People were amazed by the story of the janitor who shocked everyone with his intelligence. Many people added their own comments about similar experiences they had witnessed or heard about. "This is why we should never judge people by their jobs," wrote one person. "Imagine how many brilliant people we overlook every day," wrote another. A local news reporter saw the story online and decided to investigate. She called Riverside High School to ask if the story was true. Principal Johnson confirmed that yes, they had recently hired their former janitor as their new head of mathematics. The reporter, Sarah Kim from Channel 7 News, asked if she could interview Dr. Williams and some of the people involved. Principal Johnson said he would ask, but that Dr. Williams might want to keep his privacy. When Sarah Kim called Marcus at home, he was hesitant at first. He had never wanted to be famous. He just wanted to teach math and support his family. But his wife, Carol, encouraged him to share his story. "Think about all the other people who might be in situations like yours," Carol said. "If you tell your story, maybe it will help someone else get the opportunity they deserve." Marcus agreed to do the interview. Sarah Kim came to the school with a camera crew that afternoon. She interviewed Marcus, Principal Johnson, Mr. Davidson, and several students. "Dr. Williams, how does it feel to go from janitor to department head overnight?" Sarah Kim asked. "It feels wonderful to finally get the chance to do what I was trained to do," Marcus replied. "But I want people to know that there was nothing wrong with being a janitor. It's honest work and I was proud to do it well. The problem was that I wasn't given the opportunity to use all of my skills and education." The interview with Mr. Davidson was more difficult. He had to admit on camera that he had tried to humiliate Marcus as a cruel joke. "I thought it would be funny to watch him fail," Mr. Davidson said honestly. "But the only person who failed that night was me. I failed to see Dr. Williams as a human being deserving of respect. I learned a valuable lesson about my own prejudices and assumptions." When the news story aired that evening, it reached even more people than Emma's social media. The local story was picked up by national news networks within hours. By the end of the week, Marcus Williams was being featured on news programs across the country. The story resonated with millions of people. Many viewers shared their own experiences of being underestimated or overlooked because of their race, their job, or their background. Others talked about times when they had made unfair assumptions about people. Marcus started receiving messages from people all over the world. Some were from other teachers who had faced similar challenges in finding jobs. Others were from students who said his story inspired them to work harder in school. One message that particularly touched Marcus came from a young man named David in Detroit. "Dr. Williams," David wrote, "I'm a black college student studying engineering. I've been discouraged because I've faced a lot of discrimination, and I was thinking about giving up. Your story reminds me that I should keep fighting for my dreams. Thank you for not giving up on yours." The story also caught the attention of Marcus's former professors at MIT. Dr. Jennifer Shang, who had been Marcus's PhD advisor, called him when she saw the news. "Marcus, I'm so sorry you've had such a difficult time finding a teaching position," she said. "You were one of the most brilliant students I ever worked with. Any school would be lucky to have you." Dr. Chang asked if she could write a letter of recommendation that Marcus could use for future opportunities. "Not that you need any more credentials," she said with a laugh, "but I want to make sure everyone knows what an exceptional mathematician and teacher you are." The publicity brought some unexpected opportunities. Several universities reached out to Marcus, offering him visiting professor positions. A publisher contacted him about writing a math textbook. A documentary filmmaker wanted to make a movie about his story, but Marcus was focused on his new job at Riverside High School. He had spent 3 years dreaming about this opportunity, and he was determined to make the most of it. His first week as head of the mathematics department was busy and exciting. He met with all the math teachers to discuss curriculum changes. He observed classes to see how students were learning. He started planning the special support program he had promised to create. The students were thrilled to have him as their teacher. Word had spread that Dr. Williams was not only brilliant, but also patient and kind. Students who had been struggling with math started to feel hopeful again. "He explains things in a way that actually makes sense," Emma Johnson told her friends. "For the first time, I feel like I might actually understand calculus." Tyler Martinez, who had never been good at math, signed up for Dr. Williams's new support program. "I figured if he's smart enough to fool all the teachers for 3 years, maybe he can help me figure out algebra," Tyler said. The other teachers were adjusting to having Marcus as their colleague instead of their janitor. Some felt embarrassed about how they had treated him before. Others were excited to work with someone so accomplished. Mrs. Peterson made a special effort to apologize personally to Marcus. I'm so sorry for the way I ignored you all those years, she said. I promise to do better in the future. Thank you, Marcus replied graciously. But let's focus on moving forward. We all have a chance to learn and grow from this experience. Mr. Davidson had perhaps the hardest adjustment to make. He had gone from being the head of the math department to being supervised by the man he had tried to humiliate. But he was determined to make amends. Dr. Williams, I want you to know that I'm committed to supporting you in any way I can, Mr. Davidson said during their first department meeting. I have a lot to learn from you, both as a mathematician and as a person. The media attention continued. For several weeks, Marcus was invited to speak at education conferences and on television talk shows. He was careful to stay focused on the important messages that talent can be found anywhere, that everyone deserves to be treated with respect, and that we should not judge people by their appearance or their current job, one of his most powerful interviews was with a national morning show. The host asked him what he wanted people to learn from his story. I want people to understand that there are brilliant, talented people all around us, Marcus said. They might be cleaning your office, serving your food, or doing any number of jobs that society doesn't value highly. But that doesn't mean they don't have incredible potential. We need to look beyond the surface and see the whole person. As the weeks passed, the media attention began to die down, but the impact of Marcus's story continued to grow. Schools around the country started reviewing their hiring practices. Companies began looking more carefully at the people they had overlooked, and countless individuals started paying more attention to the people around them who they might have previously ignored. Marcus was grateful for the platform his story had given him, but he was even more grateful to finally be doing the work he loved. Every day in the classroom reminded him why he had worked so hard to become a teacher in the first place. The viral fame had been unexpected and overwhelming at times, but it had also created opportunities to make a real difference in people's lives. And that, Marcus knew, was what mattered most. 6 months had passed since that night when Marcus Williams solved the calculus problem that changed everything. Riverside High School was a different place now, and so was Marcus's life. As he walked through the hallways each morning, students and teachers greeted him with smiles and respect. The invisible janitor had become the most beloved teacher in the school. Marcus's classroom was always full of students. Some came for regular math classes, others came for extra help through his special support program. The program had grown much larger than anyone expected. Students who had given up on math were now excited about learning again. Dr. Williams makes math fun, said Tyler Martinez, who had gone from failing algebra to getting B's in geometry. He doesn't make you feel stupid when you don't understand something. He just finds a different way to explain it until it clicks. Emma Johnson had become one of Marcus's best students. With his help, she was now getting A's in calculus and considering studying engineering in college. Before Dr. Williams came, I thought math was just memorizing formulas, she said. Now I understand that it's about solving problems and thinking. Logically, it's actually pretty cool. The changes at Riverside High School went beyond just the math department. The school had implemented new hiring practices to make sure they never overlooked qualified candidates again. They had also started diversity and inclusion training for all staff members. Principal Johnson had learned important lessons from the experience. We now make sure to really look at every application we receive, he told Dr. Martinez during a follow-up visit. We also try to get to know our employees as people, not just as job titles. The school board had kept their promise to pay Marcus the back wages he should have received if he had been hired as a teacher 3 years earlier. The money allowed Marcus and his family to move to a nicer house and plan for their children's college education. Marcus's wife, Carol, was proud of how her husband had handled his sudden fame. He could have been angry and bitter about what happened. She said, instead he chose to focus on the positive. He's using this opportunity to help other people and make real changes. Their children, 10-year-old Marcus Jr. and 12-year-old Kaisha, were excited that their father was finally working as a teacher. My friends think it's so cool that my dad is famous, Kaisha said. but I'm more proud that he's helping kids learn math. Mr. Davidson had undergone perhaps the biggest transformation of anyone at the school. The experience with Marcus had forced him to examine his own attitudes and behaviors. He had started attending workshops on cultural sensitivity and had become one of Marcus's strongest supporters. Working with Dr. Williams has made me a better teacher and a better person, Mr. Davidson said. He's shown me what it means to be truly patient and kind with students. I try to model my teaching after his example now. The relationship between Marcus and Mr. Davidson had evolved into a genuine friendship. They often ate lunch together and collaborated on lesson plans. Marcus had even helped Mr. Davidson improve his own understanding of advanced calculus concepts. The other teachers at Riverside High School had also learned from the experience. Mrs. Peterson now made an effort to know all the school's support staff personally. She had discovered that the cafeteria manager had a master's degree in nutrition, and the security guard was a published poet. We had been so focused on our own little worlds that we never really saw the people around us, Mrs. Peterson reflected. Now I try to remember that everyone has a story and everyone deserves respect. The story of Marcus Williams had inspired changes at schools across the country. Many districts had reviewed their hiring practices and found similar cases of qualified candidates who had been overlooked. The media attention had sparked a national conversation about hidden talent and unconscious bias. Marcus received hundreds of letters from people who said his story had motivated them to pursue their dreams or treat others with more respect. One letter came from a woman in Texas who had been working as a school secretary while applying for teaching jobs for 5 years. After seeing Marcus's story, she decided to speak directly to her principal about her qualifications. She was hired as a teacher the following month. Another letter came from a restaurant manager in Florida who realized he had been dismissing job applications from overqualified candidates. Your story made me realize that someone might be working as a dishwasher while they look for a better opportunity, he wrote. I'm going to start really looking at people's potential, not just their current job. Marcus had been invited to speak at education conferences around the country. His message was always the same. Talent exists everywhere, and it's our responsibility to recognize and nurture it. He talked about the importance of looking beyond stereotypes and giving everyone a fair chance. At one conference, a principal from Chicago approached Marcus after his speech. Dr. Williams, your presentation was inspiring, she said. I'm going to go back to my school and make sure we're really seeing all our employees as complete human beings. The special math support program that Marcus had created at Riverside High School had become a model for other schools. Students who had been failing math were now succeeding. More importantly, they were gaining confidence in their ability to learn and solve problems. Marcus had also started a mentorship program that paired struggling students with successful professionals from the community. The program helped students see that there were many different paths to success and that their current circumstances didn't have to define their future. One of Marcus's proudest achievements was helping a student named James Rodriguez. James had been close to dropping out of school because he was failing all his classes. But Marcus saw potential in him and spent extra time helping him with math. James not only passed his classes but decided he wanted to become an engineer. He was now planning to attend community college with the goal of transferring to a 4-year university. Dr. Williams didn't just teach me math, James said. He taught me that I was capable of more than I thought. He believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. The success stories kept coming. Students who had never thought they were math people were discovering they could succeed with the right support and encouragement. Test scores in the math department had improved dramatically, but more importantly, students were developing a love of learning. Marcus's impact extended beyond just his own students. Other teachers in the school had started adopting his patient, encouraging teaching style. The whole culture of the school had become more supportive and inclusive. As Marcus reflected on the past 6 months, he felt grateful for how everything had turned out. The years of rejection and disappointment had been difficult, but they had led him to this moment. He was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing the work he was meant to do. Sometimes the worst experiences in our lives lead to the best outcomes. Marcus told his wife one evening, "If I had gotten a teaching job right away, I might have ended up at a school where I couldn't make as much of a difference." Everything happened for a reason. The story of Marcus Williams had become more than just a tale of one man's triumph over adversity. It had become a symbol of the importance of recognizing human potential wherever it exists. It reminded people that brilliance doesn't always come in the package we expect, and that everyone deserves to be seen and valued for who they truly are. As Marcus prepared for another day of teaching, he thought about all the students he would help that day. Some would struggle with basic concepts, others would surprise him with their insights, but all of them would receive his patience, respect, and unwavering belief in their ability to succeed. The janitor who had once cleaned these classrooms was now filling them with knowledge, inspiration, and hope. It was exactly what Marcus had always dreamed of doing, and he knew he would spend the rest of his career making. Sure, no student ever felt invisible or underestimated. The transformation was complete. Marcus Williams had gone from being overlooked to being celebrated, from pushing a mop to leading a department, from cleaning up after others to cleaning up misconceptions about human potential. And in doing so, he had changed not just his own life, but the lives of countless students, teachers, and people around the world who heard his story. It was proof that sometimes the most extraordinary things come from the most ordinary places. And that genius can be found anywhere if we just take the time to look.